Mid-priced halves can be super important at different times of the year. Is it going to be important to put one of these 6 guys in your team at the start of the season, or are you looking to pick up guys along the way? Why I say this is because the half position, they do pick up a lot of different statistics. Obviously, they get the kick meters, they run the ball, a lot of the good ones do anyway. They get plenty of tackle breaks. They're obviously involved in try assists, and they can score tries themselves. So along with that 20 tackles or so they usually make. And if there's someone that can reduce their missed tackles, they can be really good. So we're going to kick it off with Shaun Johnson, and a few people I've seen have him in their team. So at 562k, the average of 39.3. Pros for him, he's obviously done it for a long time, so he's very proven. He has a very high ceiling. So when he does go big, he can go absolutely nuts. You see here, I said 3 scores over 50 was all he had last year. So that was a bit of an issue. But when he does get over 50, it was 60 plus. So pretty interesting there as to how we want to play this one. People are putting him in their team thinking that he has at least 5 to 6 points of value, I'd imagine, at a 45 to 50 average. I couldn't see him being the gun that we have seen him to be in the past as a 50 plus average. But if you're looking at someone at 562 who average-wise is going to get something solid, the main issue with him I see is that there's a lot of 20s in his game. Is that something that's going to cause you issues, having him in your team, especially with your mindset and going, oh, do I actually want to keep him? Does he actually start and have 20s, 30s, 40s in his game at the beginning of the year? Because I think if he does, you go, oh, that's a failed experiment and move on from him. So I see him as being very scary, a very risky player. He was durable last year in terms of playing the majority of the season, but the years before that, he's had plenty of hammy issues and bits and pieces like that. The other positive is he does have a round 12 bye. So I definitely see him as having a nice ceiling there. Really good chance of scoring pretty well, but he also has a chance to start the year 20s and 30s and really destroy your season. So definitely a risky pod. He's definitely going to be under, I'd say, 3 or 4% ownership, and good luck to anyone who's going to pick him up. I won't be. Only 3 scores for pretty much playing the entire year over 50 just scares me too much. I know my mindset wouldn't be able to cop that. Jarome Luai is the next highest priced guy here at 535, the average of 37.5. So for him, he's obviously in an amazing team. The 44.5 average in 2020 was really nice. And then the first 7 games of 21, he did average over 50. So he definitely has some pedigree there, but he obviously hasn't been a keeper because he did end up averaging 38.5 that year in 2021 and obviously 37.5 last year. So most likely he'll end up somewhere around that mark, but I can see at certain points he will be able to do really well. What we did see last year is that his run meters weren't very high. So he only had 2 games last year over 100 run meters, whereas in 2021, especially at the beginning of the year, he was running the ball plenty and doing a great job for his side. He still played well last year, but what he was able to do was actually just get early ball to guys like Isaac Tungo and Taylor May on that left side, which he obviously did that for Brian To'o, but he didn't have the superstar center on that left side as well. That was a big runner of the footy like Isaac Tungo is and was last year. The issue with him was obviously that low base. So he doesn't do many kick meters, with Cleary being the dominant half. And that's the main issue with not being a dominant half in this bracket here, is the fact that those kick meters are down, and obviously a few more of the try assists are going to go to that dominant half as well. They're going to have their hands on the ball a lot more than a 6-star. So you really have to be a superstar running half like Munster is, who does kick as well, and a lot of these guys don't do that. The other main issue with Luai is he has a bye in round 3. So just I know a lot of people will be interested in him because he is an Origin player, and if you're new to fantasy especially, but I would be staying clear of Luai. I will mention my top 6 guys in terms of value at the end of this video as well. So Ezra Mam at 502k, the 35.2 average for him was solid, to be honest, in his first year. He's obviously super young. He's talented. He's only played half the year. He came into the game in round 11 last year. So they fell away in the back half of the year, and he did average 25 in that last 5. So, if he averaged at 35 for the rest of it, he's sitting at close to about a 40 average for the season. So just be aware that there's probably a little bit of value in him just based off that alone. Cons for him, obviously the 4.3 missed tackles a game is pretty bad, and the low kick meters. But he is someone, as I said, that's really talented, that can run the ball really well. And if the Broncos fire, I think he'll do pretty well and could average somewhere in the low 40s. So potentially a little bit of value in Ezra. I've seen him in a couple of teams, and I personally won't be going for him, just at a very awkward price. And that's the big thing with a majority of these guys. If they haven't got the main kicking role in the team, they're not kicking goals, for example, as well, to add to that, then there's just so many ways that you're missing out on points, and there's going to be so many games where you do score low. Whereas the floor for a lot of these good dominant halves, even like a Chad Townsend, for example, who doesn't score super well in fantasy, very rarely he scores under a 25 to 30 unless he has a really bad missed tackle game, because those kick meters are there and he does a lot of the work in that team. We move on to Tannah Boyd. So a little bit of a different story here. We got the hooker and half duel, which is a great start. 479k, that tad bit cheaper. Average of 29.1 last year. He is priced up to a 33 just for the fact that of how well he played at the back end of last year in that 7 and that 6 role. If we're looking at pros for him, a 47.3 average at 7 in the 6 games he played. 5 of those being last year at the end, and he scored a 43 the year before. He averages 338 kick meters when he is in a 7 role. So it looks like there's a great chance that he does get that role next to Foran, and he'll have David Fafita on his right, which they grew up playing together, which is great. In those 6 games, he had 1 try and 2 assists. So it wasn't like it was anything ridiculous in terms of the attacking stats. What he does do is kick goals, though, and it looks like he should be getting that position this year as well. So the difference between Ezra Mam, Luai, and these types of players is Boyd will be getting the majority of the kick meters, somewhere around that 300 mark. He'll be kicking goals as well. So that's, 10 to 12 to 14 points potentially each and every game that Tannah's going to be getting that these other guys won't. And that just brings up his base to much more of like a 30s. And then if he does get the attacking stats on top, he can score in the 40s. So if he does get that 7 role, I'm projecting him to score 40 when he plays. The main issues that I see for him is the fact that his spot isn't certain in the side. They've changed a lot over the last few years. Toby Sexton's been in there. And in amongst other guys, we obviously had Jamal Fogarty a couple of years before. So there's plenty of changes in that team. If Tannah comes out and only plays okay footy-wise, he could still average close to 40 if he just plays all right. But if they're losing, they could potentially move him on to one of the other guys that they have. They've obviously got Brumo in there as well, who could play the 6 and 4 in the 7. They can play Campbell at 1. So there's a few different options, and that's my only real worry for him, along with the round 5 bye. So I suppose at worst, you get 4 rounds in a row. If he scores pretty well, he's going to get up towards that 600k if he averages that 40, which is great. It's really not too much to worry about on that front, but we'll find out more about him across the preseason. And the other cons there, slightly inflated scores in really high-scoring games. One of those games, he had 8 goals, for example. So that obviously helps him out. But if the Titans are going to be, they're usually that team that you come up against them and it's a very high-scoring game. So he could still get plenty of goals, but maybe not 8 each and every week. Josh Schuster, we're going to finish off with Lachlan Ilias. We have Joshy. So he's been priced up, unfortunately. He's got the dual edge in the half at 479k. So he's priced at that 33 and a half as well, and he averaged 18.5 last year. So very frustrating on that front that he has been priced up, and I think he's going to find his way out of my team, unfortunately, due to that issue. So the pros for him, obviously the duel's great. The no-look pass is just beautiful, as always. He did average 47 at 2nd row when he did play that 2 years ago. So only thing to worry about him is the fact that he's priced at 33. He does have a 36.5 average in the 4 games that he's played at 6, which is the role he's going to get. So looks like at 6, probably a couple less tackles than obviously the edge back row. And is he going to run the ball a little bit less than he would on the edge? So that was kind of his issue in those ones. The buy in round 2 is also an issue. So I think we could probably watch him first game, to be honest, and potentially pick him up in round 3 if he has a cracker in 1, or round 3, 4, 5, wherever you would look to pick him. And just check him out and see what you think of him. See if he's fit, see if he's looking great. He's obviously someone that's fairly streaky. It can be fairly streaky and a little bit lazy as well, potentially. So just something to think about with Joshy there. Lachlan Ilias will end this here, and then we've got our value guys. So the 429k for him, average 30, so he's right on that price point as to what he averages compared to the other 2 guys above. The 33 average was minus his 2 low scores, one where he got hooked and one where he got injured in the first minute of the game. So 3 points of value there, just straight off on that. 36 he averaged in the last 15 games. So he had a pretty slow start along with the Bunnies. The main issue for them is they have a pretty tight, tough draw for that first 6 games. So, potentially he scores a little bit low at the beginning of the year as well. But I think he improved a hell of a lot as the season went on. He's in a good team, and he has the late bye. So mid-season, you can hold him all the way until about round 10 or 11, I think is when their bye is, and get him all the way there. He's not going to be a keeper, so you would have got his value from there, and you can move on. Cons for him, obviously the 25 and a half. First 6 average was not great. Not really an explosive attacking player and a pretty awkward price at 429 when you can get some cheaper guys in other positions for your bench or as cover. There's plenty of good guys in the guns for the halves. So do you need an extra guy? I probably have him as my third best, and he has a 3.3 missed tackles a game, unfortunately, which drops that average as well. But value guys, I see Boyd having the most value, cheaper price than Johnson, has the dual position. Obviously, he hasn't done it for a long time like Johnson has with that price and potential for goal kicking, which Johnson may not have. There'll be games where he does kick, but I'm not exactly sure who's their goal kicker going to be in round 1 and onwards. But they're my first two: Boydie, Johnson. Lachlan Ilias, I think, is third. Schuster for fourth, because I think he has some really nice potential. Ezra Mam in his second year could go solidly, and I think Luai is probably the last person on this list that you should pick.